with the information on the
from the update in eastern Ukraine in ATO zone with the Colonel Lysenko, the National Security and Defense Council Information Center spokesman. Proszę pan Andriy.
Доброго дня, шановні.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Yesterday, the sitting of the Council for National Defense and Security of Ukraine happened, and the set of issues connected to the security situation in Ukraine was considered that arose after the so-called elections on the 2nd of November. The Council stated that the holding of the so-called elections on the territories controlled by terrorists violates brutally the Minsk agreements. Ukraine will proceed as it proceeded before, from the priority of the peaceful settlement of all conflict situation. At the same time, we understand that we can protect our own national interests, state sovereignty and territorial integrity only while developing the defense and security potential of Ukraine. So the Council proposes specific measures of the improvement of the system of managing the sector of security. The Council recommended the President to submit to the Parliament a draft law on the cancellation of the law of Ukraine on the special order of local self-government in some districts of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The Council has also instructed law enforcement bodies to apply exhaustive measures to single out organizers and observers on the so-called elections in Donetsk and Luhansk regions. The Council has instructed the Cabinet of Ministers to work out the draft law on the special order of carrying out economic activity in these districts. Also, the Cabinet of Ministers has instructions to organized delivery of humanitarian aid to Ukrainian citizens on the territories controlled by militants. The special attention was paid to the issues of the strengthening state security. The Council instructed the state bodyguards to establish efficient control of the movement of population over the line of conflict. On the issues of energy security were also discussed, and yesterday the decree of the President of Ukraine on the set of measures aimed at strengthening the defense capacity of the state and proposals to the draft law of Ukraine on the state budget along the lines of the articles connected to the provision of security and the defense of Ukraine. The decree holds and carries a number of specific instructions, in particular about the budget financing of the needs of the national defense at the level of no less than 3% of the GDP. Also, another great range of issues is designated in the decree, from the renewal of the initial military instruction in secondary schools up to the demining of free territories in Donbass. Also, the intensive combat training of units and elements of the armed forces of Ukraine. The situation in the zone of the anti-terrorist operation is characterized by the rise of the intensity of shelling of the positions of the anti-terrorist operation forces, and a great number of military machinery and personnel is coming from the territory of Russian Federation to this territory. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine watches the movement, analyzes and calculates forces and means to adequately react in the case the offensive actions by terrorists are activized. Over the last 24 hours, the activity of Russian mercenaries was concentrated on the territories of Novy Aidar and Popasna districts of Luhansk region, next to Debaltsevo in the south of Donetsk region and around Donetsk itself. The Russian armed forces continue the air reconnaissance next to Mariupol and in the district of Trokh-Izbenka on the river of Siversky Donets. 5 drones were detected during the last day. In the southern on the southern direction, the Russian terrorist troops have twice shelled from tanks and mortars positions of the anti-terrorist operation next to the village of Pavlopil in Novozovsk district. They also fired from firearms and sniper arms in the vicinity of Talakivka and Hnutove. In all cases, our forces replied with artillery and mortar fire. Militants from mortars, anti-tank rocket complexes and artillery have fired again on the positions and convoys of anti-terrorist operation on the highway Donetsk-Mariupol. And in Donetsk, the terrorists 4 times have shelled from artillery, mortars, grenade launchers, and fired from firearms on the positions of Ukrainian military and the territory of the airport. However, after the Ukrainians fired back, the mercenaries were not brave enough to go to storm our positions. The terrorists have shelled the positions of the anti-terrorist operation from Grad batteries not far from Debaltsevo, and 4 times next to the settlement of Nikishine Chernukhine. Our positions next to the city of Zolote and Frunze were shelled from mortars. 4 times they shelled from Grad batteries the village Krymske. Also, after the Russian drone flight, the terrorists have fired from artillery at the city of Popasna. Over the last 24 hours, 2 Ukrainian military were killed and 9 wounded. Yesterday, the movable brigades of the concerned Ukroboronprom have restored 1 tank and 2 armored personnel carriers for the National Guards of Ukraine. They also repaired, tuned to the combat state 3 artillery system. Lately, in the internet network, there's circulating the news that allegedly the Luhansk Regional State Administration that temporarily works in Severodonetsk wants to move. This does not correspond to reality. These are unfounded rumors. In spite of constant shelling from the side of terrorists yesterday and the frontline settlement of Chernukhine Popasna district, there was a working visit of workers of the various departments of Luhansk Regional State Administration and representatives of Ukr-Telecom, Ukrainian Postal Office, Communal Enterprise Pharmacy, state and private banks. And the aim of the visit was the restoration of normal life in the settlement and normal functioning of all services. Simultaneously, the workers of the Ukrainian Postal Office have brought to Chernukhine pensions for November and preceding months. After the 2 months lack of electricity as a result of the shelling from militants, recently electricity was restored, as well as central water supply and heating in residential houses. Yesterday, in the vicinity of the settlement Alexandro Shulgine, Bilogorod, the bodyguards patrol in the bus have detected a resident of Dnipropetrovsk who is a participant of Bezler's terrorist group. He was detained and handed over to the Interior Ministry. Also, they have detained a 33-year-old resident of Dnipropetrovsk, a citizen of Ukraine, who was at the service of special services of Russian Federation. He propagated separatism and helped militants of the terrorist organizations DNR and LNR in preparing terrorist acts on the territory of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. It was established that in July this year he was recruited by the Federal Service of Security of Russia on the territory of the temporarily annexed Crimea with an aim to prepare subversion acts in the region. Through social networks, he was selecting local residents as the so-called militiamen, who in the future could have taken part in armed attacks at the units of National Guards and armed forces. In his dwelling, the two grenades and computer machinery were detected that the men used for anti-Ukrainian propaganda. Also, a great number of copies of the newspaper Novorossiya. At the moment, a criminal case has been launched according to Article 110 and Article 258, the encroachment on the territorial integrity of Ukraine and terrorist act. Over the 24 hours, 87 units of munition were defused, including 16 mortar mines and 11 artillery projectiles. 5.5 hectares of territory were searched, and starting from July, 960 administrative buildings and other buildings were searched for explosive devices and objects, and more than 1,484 hectares of territory was inspected, and 26.5 thousand units of ammunition were defused. The President of Ukraine talked over the phone with the State Secretary of the USA, John Kerry. In particular, the President proposed to restore the Geneva format of multilateral dialogue for the peaceful settlement of the situation in Donbass on the level of Ministers of Foreign Affairs. John Kerry expressed the support from USA to Ukraine and to the actions of the President as far as the observing the spirit and letter of Minsk Protocol is concerned. He also greeted Ukraine with the holding of free and democratic elections to the parliament on the 26th of October, and he has highly praised the achievement of gas agreements in the format Ukraine, EU, Russia. The interlocutors have discussed the details of military and technical cooperation and the issue of the visit to Ukraine of the Vice President of the USA, Joseph Biden, that will take place on the 21st of November. The NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg said that NATO reproaches Russia of the continuous military interference and play of muscle. Lately, we have seen how Russian troops have moved closer and closer to the border of Ukraine. Besides, Russia still supports and trains militants and supplies them with equipment, the General Secretary of NATO said. The spokesperson of the State Department of USA, Jane Psaki, said that the redeployment of Russian forces to the border of Ukraine is another violation from the side of Russia of Minsk agreements. Russia is taking steps aimed at escalation, and of course the movement of troops is one of them, the spokesperson of the State Department said. The High Commissioner representative of EU, Federica Mogherini, said that EU and NATO together understand the necessity of strict reaction to the actions of Russia against Ukraine. Also, there was a statement from Grzegorz Schetina, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Do we preserve this regime of the ceasefire, and has there been any decision made on that at the meeting of the National Security and Defense Council? The protocol signed in Minsk on the 5th of September and memorandum signed in Minsk on the 19th of September are still effective, and the ceasefire regime is also still effective. And I would add, however, the President of Ukraine issued order as to reinforcing the checkpoints by the equipment and personnel, and also paying more attention to all the movements of Russian Federation, including the movement of military equipment and personnel on the territory of Ukraine. And my question is, everyone heard about the myth that the servicemen of the National Guard will be given a piece of land and 2 slaves. Why is that done, and how to react to that? You know that the myths are created to have myths so that people believe in something, but we have a state of law, legal state, and we act according to the Ukrainian laws, and that's done by Russian mass media, and people do believe that people will get a piece of land and 2 slaves. Again, we are operating within the legal framework. Today there was a joke that after Dmitro Yarosh watched Russian TV, he became afraid of the right sector. That's another myth, and that's a work of Russian propaganda. So we would like to thank you for filtering this information and for presenting the truthful information. We will invite Margot from the project Stop Fake, and she will provide comments on that. Will there be another law passed on the special status of Donbass? Because that's one of the conditions, one of the terms of Minsk agreement. The Verkhovna Rada recommended, the Defense Council recommended to the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine to consider this issue, because we do need this law on the self-government on the territory of Donbass, and the new Verkhovna Rada will be taking such a decision. As soon as the decision is made, we will inform you. There's no sense in that, because they had the pseudo elections on the 2nd of November. Once you have no more questions, I would like to thank you, and the next briefing of the Security and Defense Council will be tomorrow at 12:30.